Okay. Hello, how are you? So far, in the first half of the fifth Animorphs book, The Predator, the Animorphs are helping their new foundling Andalite friend, Aximili Escarouth Isthil, to create an imitation of a Yerk distress beacon. His plan is to lure a Yerk bug fighter to the ground so that they can ambush and steal a Yerk bug fighter, which will help him reach the Andalite homeworld, which will help them bring reinforcements from the Andalite sooner rather than later. But to create an imitation of a Yerk distress beacon, he's been building a transponder, he's been building the beacon, mostly out of parts they were able to obtain from Radio Shack, the one piece that you can't get at an Earth shopping mall is the Z Space transponder. But their assistant principal, Chapman, they know is a controller and seemingly a fairly high-ranking controller because he does report directly to Visser 3 on seemingly a weekly basis. And he must be using a Z Space transponder to correspond with Visser 3, who is aboard the Blade ship in orbit around planet Earth. So they're going to try to sneak into Chapman's house, and because he has a secret room in his basement. And the way they're trying to do this is as ants, and that is not going well. So that's where we left off. And yes, I believe Radio Shack has gone out of business. I think the Canadian arm of Radio Shack rebranded as The Source, but I don't know if there are any Radio Shack branded Radio Shacks still in operation. Chapter 13. We hit the wall. I knew it was the concrete wall of the foundation. I knew, logically, that just a foot or so over my head, the wall became wood siding. But I could not see that kind of distance. What I saw and felt and smelled was that the horizontal world had simply stopped. Reality had a corner. The entire world, as far as I was concerned, was a corner between concrete and sand, one vertical, one horizontal. The concrete was full of cracks and pits big enough for me to climb inside of. Head down, Jake reminded us. Head down, Jake reminded us. Look for a way to follow the wall down. There's a tunnel here, Rachel said, but it smells bad. Real bad. She was right. I found the tunnel too. It was one of theirs. It belonged to the enemy. I know there is an enemy. I can sense it, Axe said. But who? What? I don't know, Jake said grimly. Let's just hope they're not around. We headed down the tunnel. The smell of the enemy was powerful. Their stench wrapped around us. We were an invading force. We were going deep, deep into enemy territory. The tunnel was narrow. Boulders brushed constantly against my abdomen. My legs kicked some away. Others had to be moved aside. I should have felt cramped and claustrophobic, with the earth all around me and my friends close ahead and behind me. But my Aunt Mind was at home in the tunnels. I was traveling down. I knew my head was pointed down, but gravity seemed less important than it did when I was a human. There's a side tunnel up here, Rachel said. She was in the lead. Big surprise. There are a couple of side tunnels. It's starting to branch out. Should I... Ah! What? Oh, an ant. What? Rachel? He's running away. It's okay. He was smaller than me. He ran off down a side tunnel. I guess we're the baddest ants in the tunnel, I said, trying to joke away the sudden clutch of very human terror. Let's hope so, Jake said. I feel air, Axe reported. A breeze, down this next side tunnel. Follow it, Jake said. Quickly, we were out of the sand boulders and in a canyon. That's what it seemed like, anyway, like a deep, deep canyon. A crack in the concrete foundation. We clambered over craggy rocks and squeezed along the narrow crack, all while the breeze grew stronger. Then we were out of the canyon. We were on a flat, vertical plain. I think we're there, Cassie suggested. I sense open space all around. Air. And it's dark. Okay, morph out, but be careful. Wait, get horizontal first, I said. Humans can't cling to walls, and we don't know how high up we are. Marco's right, and someone should go first. For once, I volunteer, I said. I couldn't wait to get out of that ant body. First, I moved away from them. It was totally dark. So I didn't have to watch the changes in myself. But trust me, feeling them was bad enough. Once I was human again, I began to look for a light. Then, I froze. My huge human feet could crush my friends. I stood perfectly still and ran my hands along the wall. Nothing, a bulletin board, a desk, phone, some kind of machine, probably a fax. There, a lamp. The sudden light was blinding. I blinked and covered my eyes with my hand. As soon as I could see, I looked around. I was in a very small room, like a windowless office. I was alone. Then I looked down at my body. Arms, legs, feet. Yes, human. Completely human. We see light, Jake said. I know you can't thought speak now, so if it's safe, flick the light. I could see them now. 4 tiny ants huddled against the corner of the wall. It took my breath away. Had that been me? I had been one of them? Down there? I flicked the light. Seconds later, they began to demorph. I turned away and focused on rifling through the desk. That was gross beyond belief, Cassie said. She was the first to complete her change. Yeah, I agreed. I don't want to do that again, she said. I could hear the shiver of fear and disgust in her voice. I didn't answer. I was too scared to want to talk about it. If I talked about it, it would become real, you know? Better not to think. Better to shove it out of my mind. This is the place, Rachel said, when she had grown eyes and a mouth again. I recognize it. Chapman's office. I was a cat when I was in here, but this is it. Let's get this done. In and out, Jake said nervously. Axe, find that transponder. Axe, now fully Andalite again, immediately began removing a panel from the thing I had thought was a fax machine. I continued looking through Chapman's desk. Nothing much there. No papers, no files. Axe looked at me and smiled in that way Andalites have of smiling with just their eyes. He touched a small cube I thought was a paperweight. The paperweight lit up and projected a picture into the air in front of me. Cool, I said. A computer, right? Yes, a computer. I poked the air, pointing at a symbol that looked like it would be a folder. It opened. The document was written in some totally alien alphabet. You can use a computer? Sure. You can use a computer? Sure, why not? This is a few hundred years more advanced than ours, but stop, Axe said suddenly. Go back to that last document. You can read this stuff? Yes, he stared intently. Yes, he stared intently. It is an announcement. The Yerks have an important visitor arriving soon. Visser 1. Visser 1. That would be like Visser 3's boss? Yes. Yes. Visser 1 is more... sorry, Axe dialogue is difficult. Which I know. I made Axe dialogue difficult for myself. This is my own doing. Yes. Visser 1 is more powerful than Visser 3, just as Visser 3 is more powerful than Visser 4. There are 47 Vissers in the Yerk Empire, or so we believe. Great, I said. 47. 47. Not all like our friend Visser 3, I hope. Axe was back at work getting the transponder out of the fax-like machine. No, he answered. Only Visser 3 has an Andalite body. Only he can morph. Visser 1 has a human body, I believe. Ah, here, I have it. He held up a tiny, shiny disc, no bigger than a pea. Okay, let's get out of here, Jake said. Let's get out of here, Jake said. Put that thing near the crack. We won't have to carry it as far. Everyone, morph back. Let's bail. It was the moment I dreaded. I didn't want to return to that ant body. It made me want to cry just thinking of it, but there was no other way. If we tried to sneak out of the basement by going up through the house, we might be caught. Boy, I do not want to do this, I muttered. But at the same time, I focused on that ant shape, and as I watched, my friends began to change. Once we had shrunk back to ant size, the transponder seemed enormous. It was far bigger than we were. Standing beside it, feeling it with my legs and an antennae, it felt about as big as a two-car garage. Everybody says ants are incredibly strong for their size, Cassie pointed out. Let's see if that's true. It seemed impossible, but Cassie, Rachel, and Axe managed to lift that monstrous load off the ground. I mean, it was like seeing 3 people walking down the street carrying a city bus. That's how big it was. It is true what they say about ants. For their size, they are some strong little bugs. When we reached the vertical wall, the three of them had to push it ahead and roll it up the wall like some gigantic steel donut. We reached the crack. They shoved the transponder in. Jake and I were in the lead. It took all 5 of us to drag that thing over the crags of the concrete canyon. But we made it through and back to the dirt tunnel. The transponder was so big it blocked the tunnel. The transponder was so big it blocked the tunnel like a spitwad in a straw. But with Axe, Rachel, and Cassie behind pushing, and Jake and I clearing the boulders, grains of sand, out of the way, we made progress. It happened suddenly. There was no warning. 1 second, the tunnel ahead of me was empty. The next second, it was full. Full of a charging, racing army of ants. Enemies, my ant brain said. Now the killing would begin. Chapter 14. They're behind us. It was Rachel, yelling. Breaking through the side of the tunnel, Cassie screamed. They're everywhere. Help! Help! Arg! Arg. The speed of their attack was incredible. The force of their attack was impossible to explain. There were hundreds of them, ahead, behind, flooding up from side tunnels, bursting from the walls. My leg! They bit off my leg! Oh, my neck! Oh, help me! There were 3 of them on me. They were pulling me. There were 3 of them on me, pulling me, trying to force me down so they could tear me apart. Tear me apart. A 4th scampered over my head, brushing my antennae. He locked his mandibles onto my narrow waist. He was trying to bite me in half. There was no defense. We could not win. We would all be dead in a few seconds. They were machines, absolutely without fear, unstoppable. Morph, I yelled. It's the only way. Morph. One of my legs came loose, torn away, ripped out by the roots. Ah! No, help me! I could feel my waist being sawed through by the grinding, sharp mandibles. A searing liquid was fired at me. Poison. They were stinging me again and again and ripping me apart. Human. I wanted to be human again. Please, please just let me live long enough to become human again. Morph, Jake's voice. Then, no, no! My waist would snap. The My waist would snap. The mandibles would not release me. Then, suddenly, the pressure around my waist was gone. Instead, I Instead, I felt the sandy soil pressing against me. I was growing. I couldn't breathe. Sand blocked the air. Pressure. Then the ground around me opened up. I swear it was like climbing up out of a grave. The air, fresh, clean night air. I exploded up out of the sand. I exploded up out of the sand. Jake was on top of me, pushing against me as he grew, and the others, who had only been inches away in the tunnel, also pressed together in a rapidly growing heap of misshapen bodies. I tried to squirm away, but it was awkward. I was only half human. But at last, I lay there on the ground, staring up through human eyes at the stars. Are you guys okay? It was Tobias. Cassie? Jake asked. I'm okay, Cassie said. Me too, Jake. Thanks for asking, Rachel said. We were all alive, all in one piece, 4 humans and 1 Andalite. I looked down and saw the disturbed sand where we had pushed our way up and out. Thousands of ants, almost too small to see, were racing wildly around. There, too, in the dirt, was the transponder. I picked it up. Rachel was stomping the ground back down, trying to flatten it out so it wouldn't look so strange. Jake, I said, let's not do this again anytime soon. He nodded shakily. One day I'm a lobster, then I'm an ant. I figure the next step down the evolutionary ladder is a virus or something, and I just want to say right now, I'm not doing it. I am not going to become phlegm, even to save the world. It wasn't much of a joke, but there was a kind of lame little laugh from everyone. And Rachel stopped stomping the ants for a moment. I mean, the ground. That night, when I went home, I took a shower. I had found the head of an ant. It was still locked onto the skin of my waist. Lots of people think only humans fight wars, that only humans are murderous. Let me tell you something. Compared to ants, human beings are full of nothing but peace, love, and understanding. A month or so after the experience with ants, I picked up a book about ants. The author said, if ants had nuclear weapons, they would probably end the world within a week. He's wrong, though. It wouldn't take them that long. Chapter 15. I was cool. I was fine. I slept okay. There were dreams, but I just put them out of my mind. When I got up the next morning, I ignored the fact that my dad's eyes were red, like he'd been crying. He was getting worse, not better, as we got closer to Sunday, to the 2nd-year anniversary of my mom's death. But I had to put that out of my mind, too. I had to put a lot of things out of my mind. It was getting to be a habit. I saw Jake in the hallway at school. I pretended not to notice him. I saw Rachel, too. She had a dark look in her eyes, like she hadn't slept, like something was really wrong. Even Cassie seemed grim. It had gotten to all of us. It's not so easy to just forget terror. It's not easy to just ignore the memory of one of your legs being ripped off, of being dismembered, torn apart. One of these days, I thought, one of us is going to go crazy. Totally lock me up in a one of us is going to go crazy. Totally. Lock me up in a rubber room nutso. It was too much. This wasn't how life was supposed to be. One of us would snap. One of us would lose it. It could happen, even to strong people. I knew because it had happened to my father. I used to think nothing could ever destroy him. But my mom's death had. He used to be an engineer, a scientist, really. He's incredibly smart. We had a nice house. We had a nice car. I used to live practically next door to Jake. I know all that stuff isn't important. I know all that stuff isn't important. I know having things isn't what life is about. But it was still hard when my dad just stopped going to work. Jerry, his boss, tried to be nice. He gave him a couple of weeks to deal with losing mom, but a couple of weeks was not enough. My dad's a janitor now, part-time. He gets jobs through it. Sorry. My dad's a janitor now, part-time. He gets jobs through a temporary service. He unpacks boxes at department stores, that kind of things. But I don't care what kind of job he has. That doesn't matter. Mhm. What matters is that when I lost my mom, I lost my dad too. See, people can snap. People can lose it. I know. I cruised through the morning classes. No big deal. At lunch, I ended up at a table with Rachel. She didn't seem to notice me. She was just hunched over her meal, eating mechanically. A girl named Jessica came walking past with her tray. She bumped into Rachel, which made Rachel drop her fork, and it splattered down into the food on her tray. I don't know if Jessica did it deliberately or not. She is the kind of girl who thinks she's tough. Watch it, Rachel snapped. What? Jessica demanded, acting outraged. Are you yelling at me? Are you yelling at me? Don't give me any of your mouth. I might have to slap it for you. Then then she shoved against Rachel's back. In a flash, Rachel was up, out of her seat. She spun around. She grabbed Jessica by the collar of her sweatshirt and pushed the girl back against the next table. Jessica probably outweighs Rachel by 50 pounds, but it didn't matter. Rachel had her on her back on the Rachel had her on her back on the table, scattering dishes and food everywhere. Rachel leaned over Jessica and in a voice of cold steel said, "Don't touch me." I saw Jake across the room, too far away to intervene. Cassie was with him. It was up to me. I jumped up and raced to Rachel. I took a deep breath and shoved both my arms between the two of them. Back off, Marco. Back off, Marco, Rachel said. Get her off me! She's crazy, Jessica cried. I scared Gilgamesh. Sorry. I pushed against Rachel, trying to force her off Jessica. Suddenly, Jessica started lashing out. I assumed she was trying to hit Rachel, but she missed. Ow! I grabbed my left eye. What are you hitting me for? And that's when the first teacher showed up. 5 minutes later, Jessica, Rachel, and I were all sitting in the assistant principal's office. Chapman's office. Jessica was acting outraged in a very loud voice. Rachel was staring ahead stonily. I was wondering whether my eye was just going to keep swelling up. Chapman glared at us. What is the meaning of this? He demanded. Fighting in the lunchroom? And you, Rachel, of all people. Fighting in the lunchroom? And you, Rachel, of all people. What, like you think she's better than me? Jessica demanded. Chapman ignored her. He focused on Rachel. Is something the matter? Mr. Halloran says you started the fight. Are you okay, Rachel? Is there some kind of stress in your life? For a split second, I was afraid. The look in Rachel's eyes was dangerous. I had this terrible flash of her saying, "Yeah, Mr. Chapman, I am a little stressed. I nearly got killed turning into an ant to sneak into your basement to fight you and the rest of your evil Yerk friends." I knew Rachel was too cool for anything like that, but then I would have said she was too cool to start a fight in the lunchroom. "It's my fault, Mr. Chapman," I said. "Your fault?" His eyes narrowed. "Yes, sir. Um, yes, sir. They were fighting over me. See, they both want me. They're both madly in love with me, and I can certainly understand why, can't you?" "Are you crazy, you little toad?" Jessica shrieked. "Are you crazy, you little toad?" Jessica shrieked. But when I glanced over at Rachel, I saw just the slightest little tugging at the corner of her mouth, the beginnings of a smile. Chapman yelled at us for a few minutes. Chapman yelled at us for a few minutes and told us all to make appointments with the school counselor. Then he let us go. In the hallway outside his office, Rachel walked with me. "I wish I could do that," she said. "What?" "Always think things are funny? It's why you're so, you know, cool and in control." Me? Cool and in control? The idea surprised me. Rachel thought I was in control? "Yesterday, last night, it got to me," she said. She shrugged. Then she smiled her supermodel smile at me. "You grind my nerves sometimes, Marco. Always joking the way you do, but keep it up, okay? We need a sense of humor." Humor? Sorry. Humor? You thought I was kidding? You mean you and Jessica aren't both insanely in love with me? "Dream on, Marco," she said. Chapter 16. Axe finished building his distress beacon. He had it ready the next day, now that he had the Z space transponder. Now we just had to figure out where to lay our trap. It couldn't be any place that would ever be connected with us. Not Cassie's farm, or the nearby woods, not even anywhere in town if we could help it. A couple of days after the ant episode, we hooked up again in the fields of Cassie's farm, up against the trees of the forest. Some of the phrasing used in the mid-1990s just isn't translating in my mind. But that is what that sentence says. We all hooked up again in the fields of Cassie's farm, up against the trees. I can hear Matt laughing from the den, and it's making me laugh. I'm sorry. Oh. This was one area we definitely had to keep safe. It was the only place we had to keep Axe if this mission to help him escape failed. It was Tobias who came up with the answer. "There's a gravel quarry. It's further inland. There's never anyone there, and it is just about an hour's flying time away." "If we're flying somewhere, we'll have to get Axe a bird morph of some type," Jake said. He looked to Cassie. "We have a few choices in the barn," she said. She bit her lip, thinking. "We have a northern harrier that was poisoned. About your size, Tobias." Axe? Axe, do you mind picking up a bird morph?" Jake asked. I have admired Tobias's shape. It is truly wonderful in every way. The sharp talons, the beak, much better than the human body. Not that I mean to offend. It is just that humans have no natural weapons. I miss my tail when I am in human morph." No offense taken, I said. But, but you're No offense taken, I said, but you're wrong about humans having no natural weapons. You you marinate human feet in a pair of old tennis shoes for a few hours on a hot day, and you'll see a deadly weapon, the dreaded stinkfoot. Okay, that's settled, Jake said. Now let's get down to details. If we're going to call down a bug fighter, we need to have a plan ready. Saturday should be the day, I think. As long as it doesn't involve ants, I said. I meant it as a joke, but no one laughed at that one. No ants, Jake agreed quietly. I shook my head in amusement. You know, you know, we're talking about we're talking about taking on Hork-Bajir and taxons. I used to think they were the scariest things in the world, but it's the little ant that scares me worse now. When the meeting broke up, I hung around until Jake was done saying goodbye to Cassie. Jake and I walked home together. For a while, we talked about the normal kinds of things we used to talk about before our lives changed. We talked about basketball and disagreed over which was the best NBA team. We talked about music, but neither of us had bought a new CD recently. We even talked about whether Spider-Man could kick Batman's butt or vice versa. You know, stupid, normal, everyday stuff. I was stalling because I didn't want to have to tell him what I had decided. But Jake's been my friend forever. He knows me. Marco, what's the problem? What do you mean? I mean, you haven't said a single mean yet funny thing the whole way, and that's not you. I laughed. Then I just blurted it out. This is my last time, I said. What do you mean? He knew exactly what I meant, of course. I'm in it for this time, but that's it. No more after that. And I'm serious. No one is going to guilt me into it. I've done enough. He thought about that for a while as we walked. You're right. You have done enough. You've done a million times more than enough. It's just been too many close calls. Yeah. One of these days, we aren't going to pull it off, you know? One of these days, we aren't going to pull it off, you know? 10 more seconds, and those ants would have had us. And, be- and before that, it was a pot of boiling water. And before that, I was practically killed by sharks. I mean, come on. Enough is enough. You're right, Jake said. Yeah. I was surprised you took it so well. I guess I shouldn't have been. We all kind of we all kind of treat Jake like he's the leader, but he's never been pushy about it. What are you going to do Sunday? He asked. That took me by surprise again. I don't know. Some Sundays we go to my mom's grave, leave flowers and all. But this is the 2-year thing, I shrugged. I don't know, man. He just nodded. But I'll tell you one thing, Jake. A year from now, I don't want my dad going to leave flowers at 2 graves, okay? Matt says, oh, wait. What is it? Chapter 17. This is wonderful. Wonderful. Flying. The 6 of us were all together, flying. It was the first time for Axe. He just kept saying how wonderful it was. He wouldn't shut up. It was the most excited he'd been since he'd discovered coffee. Which was cool, because flying really is wonderful. These are excellent eyes, Axe said. Far better than your human eyes. Even better than my Andalite eyes. Yeah, birds of prey usually have great daytime vision, Tobias said. I think mine may actually be a little bit better than yours, though. I doubt that, Axe said. It is hard to imagine better vision than this. Remember the good old days, I asked. When we used to argue over who had the best jump shot? Now it's which one of us has the best bird eyes. We were sailing above a patch of woods. It was almost solid green below us. We had risen high on a beautiful thermal. A thermal is a warm bubble of air that acts like an elevator, letting you soar high with almost no effort. We hoped there would be no bird watchers down in the woods. We met a very unlikely flock: a red-tailed hawk, a falcon, a harrier, a bald eagle, and two ospreys. We kept some distance between us, so it wouldn't be too obvious that we were together. May I propose another drinking game in which we take a shot every time they obviously should have been Canada geese? Like, I know nobody ever wants to be a Canada goose, but like every time you think you should obviously be Canada geese right now. Also, the bald eagle, who is Rachel, was carrying something that looked like a small TV remote control. She was the biggest bird. She got stuck lifting the weight. I have an idea, I said. Let's just blow off the suicide mission and spend the day flying around. Sounds good to me, Cassie said. She meant it to be lighthearted. It sounded just a little too serious. There's the quarry, Tobias announced. Dead ahead. Dead ahead! Excellent choice of words, I said. We made a large circle over the area, looking for anyone who might be in the woods, but there was no one. We spiraled down from the sky, down into the deep, open gash in the earth that was the gravel quarry. It was a desolate place, just a big hole in the ground with some water pooling in the lowest spots. A few minutes later, and we were back in our usual forms, minus shoes, of course, and wearing our motley collection of morphine clothes. We look like a trapeze act from a cheap circus, I said. Way too much spandex. Don't start with the uniforms again, Rachel said. Pardon me? Don't start with the uniforms again, Rachel said. It was an old debate. I would say how we needed some decent superhero uniforms. You know, like the X-Men or whatever. But now, I realized, I shouldn't be talking that way, as if we were all going to be together in the future. I couldn't tell if Jake had told any of the others that I was quitting. Probably he had told Cassie. I doubted Rachel knew, or she would have said something. The same with Tobias. And Axe? Who knew with Axe? He was still a mystery to us. It was one of the things I would miss after I quit. I mean, how often do you get to hang out with a real alien? That and the flying. I would miss the flying. But if I was out, I had to be out all the way. I guess I must have just looked morose, sitting there on a pile of rocks, thinking. Jake came over and kind of gave me a shove, you know, in a friendly way. Come on. Come on, we need to go back under that overhang, out of sight. Great, I said. Great, I said. The rocks will fall and crush us, and we won't have to worry about the Yerks. There was a sort of shallow cave in the quarry wall, not deep at all, but it would hide us from anyone flying overhead. Well, Jake said, let's try this out. Axe, you ready to trigger that thing? Yes, I am very ready, Prince Jake. Jake looked around at everyone. You all ready to go into your various morphs? We nodded, all except Axe. See, we were all going to go into morph, our strongest, deadliest morphs, in order to take care of the Yurt crew when they came. But Axe didn't have anything but a shark, a lobster, an ant, and a harrier. We figured he was better off in his own andalite body, which was plenty dangerous. Okay, Axe, do it. Everyone, morph. And let's keep our fingers crossed, I added. Or talons, claws, or hooves, as the case may be. Axe pressed a button on his distress beacon. As far as we could tell, Nothing happened. It is working, he assured us. So Rachel, Cassie, Jake, and I began to morph. These were all morphs we had done before. There would be no battle to maintain control over the animal mind. Rachel went into her elephant morph. We figured we might need that brute strength and size. Jake slowly became a tiger. Cassie used her wolf morph, and I focused on my gorilla. What a freak scene this is, I laughed as the changes began. Anyone who stumbles onto this would just think he'd lost his mind. It was definitely odd. You haven't seen weird until you've seen pretty blonde supermodel Rachel grow a trunk as thick as a small tree and ears the size of umbrellas. Or Cassie, growing gray fur over every inch of her body, falling to all fours and bearing long yellow teeth. And then there was Jake. Huge curved claws grew from his fingers. A snake-like tail whipped out behind him. Orange and black fur covered him. And when he was done, he was a full-grown tiger, almost 10 feet from his nose to his tail, easily 400 pounds. If something deadly can ever be beautiful, it's a tiger. Bet I could kick your butt, I said to Jake. Yeah, monkey boy? I don't think so. Hey, I could stomp both of you, Rachel said. She walked closer, swinging her trunk and flaring her ears out, a moving mountain. This is so mature, Cassie said, arguing over who can beat who. Ha. Ha. You're only saying that because we can all kick your butt, Wolfie, I pointed out. As if, Cassie protested. You'd have to catch me first. You'd have to catch me first, and I could still be running long after the three of you were worn out and fast asleep. You have an amazing variety of animals on your planet, Axe said. Someday, when the Yeerks are defeated, Andalites will come here simply to try out the many animal forms. It would be like a vacation. Joe Andalite, you've won the Super Bowl. Now where are you going? I said, mimicking the Disney World commercials. I'm going to Earth to turn into a lobster. I do not understand, Axe said. I started to explain, but just then a red light began to flash on Axe's homemade distress beacon. The response signal. They are coming. Quick, everyone to your places, Jake said. He slunk away, liquid power, to hide in the shadow of a boulder. Rachel pressed back under the shallow overhang. Cassie trotted into a spot to the right of Jake, and I tried not to look like a 400-pound gorilla behind a pile of gravel. Tobias flapped hard, struggling to gain altitude. Swoosh. It came in low, just above the tree level, then disappeared. It came in low, just above the tree level, then disappeared before turning to come back around. A bug fighter. Just as we'd planned. Here's your ride home, Axe, I said. I think that is probably a good place to stop for tonight. Let me see how long the next chapter is. Actually, I think maybe one more, because it's a pretty short one. Do you want to share the realization you had, Matt? Or later? Chapter 18. Swoosh. The bug fighter flew over once again, seemed to pause, then settled down toward the floor of the quarry. Bug fighters are the smallest of the Yeerk ships. They aren't much bigger than a school bus. They have a cowled insect-like look, except that on either side there are very long serrated spears pointing forward. So they look a little like a cockroach holding two spears. The bug fighter landed as gently as a feather. I held my breath. Wait for it, Jake said. Wait for it. The hatch opened. Out stepped a Hork-Bajir controller. The Andalite prince, Axe's brother, had told us that the Hork-Bajir were a good, decent people who had been enslaved against their will by the Yeerks. Uh-huh, maybe so. But what they looked like was a whole different thing. Hork-Bajir are big, walking razor blades. They're about 7 feet tall, 2 arms, 2 legs, and a nasty spiked tail, similar to the Andalite tails. There are sword-like blades raked forward from their snake heads. There are blades at their elbows, and wrists, and knees. I mean, let me put it this way. If Klingons were real, they would be afraid of Hork-Bajir. Get ready, Jake said again. The Hork-Bajir stepped clear of the bug fighter. Then he just stood there. There will be a taxon inside also, Axe reminded us. Yeah, I said, we know. Why was the Hork-Bajir just standing there? He should be looking around. After all, he was answering a distress beacon. Why was he just standing there like he was waiting for something? On the count of 3, Jake said in our heads. 1, 2, 3. Tobias swooped, falling from the sky at close to 100 miles an hour. He raked his talons forward and hit the Hork-Bajir in the face. I cannot roar like a tiger. Jake leapt from cover. He sailed through the air and hit the Hork-Bajir with paws outstretched and claws bared. The Hork-Bajir went down hard. Jake rolled away as the Hork-Bajir slashed the air like an out-of-control Cuisinart. But just then, Rachel rumbled up, as big as a tank. Okay, back off, Jake, Rachel said. I have him. She pressed one big tree stump leg on the Hork-Bajir's chest and pressed him down against the ground. She did not crush him, just held him like a bug who could easily be squashed. The Hork-Bajir decided it was time to stop struggling and lie very still. Too easy, a part of my mind warned me. Too easy. No Hork-Bajir controller had ever just given up like that. But I had other problems. My job was to get inside the bug fighter, get the taxon pilot. Let's go, I yelled. I ran forward, loping clumsily on my squat gorilla legs, swinging my massive, mighty gorilla arms. Cassie and Axe were right there with me. Taxons are disgusting, oversized centipedes, but I wasn't worried. We were more than enough to handle a taxon. But then, zap! A brilliant red beam of light sliced the air just inches in front of me. It blocked my way. Zap! Another beam of blinding red light. This one crossing behind me. It exploded gravel into steam as it traced a path. Dracon beams, Axe cried. I spun around, looking for cover. Zap! Look! Cassie screamed in our heads. Up on the edge of the quarry! I looked as the Dracon beams formed a cage of deadly light around us. The edge of the quarry above was lined with Hork-Bajir. I looked left. More. To the right. More. The entire quarry was lined with Hork-Bajir warriors, each armed with a Dracon beam. There must have been 100 of them. We were surrounded. Completely surrounded. Stay and morph, Jake snapped. Don't let them know we're human. Let's charge them, Rachel yelled. No, you can't even climb up that rock face. Don't be stupid. Cassie called to Tobias. Tobias? You can get away? I don't think so, he said. No headwind. It would take me a couple of minutes to flap my way up out of here. They'd fry me before I got clear. The reality settled over us. The despair. What are we going to do? Cassie wailed. There has to be a way out. There has to be. Rachel yelled. Not this time, I said grimly. We were trapped. Outnumbered. Outsmarted. Finished. And that was when he came. All right. I think that brings us almost to the hour mark, and doesn't leave a lot this much to finish next week. Thank you so much, and I hope I will see you again. Good night.